So now that we know why we need quantum mechanics, we've seen the wave particle duality and all of that, we understand what a wave function is. We need to, in order to proceed further, we first need to understand the mathematical background. Okay, because quantum mechanics is written in the language of mathematics. So if we do not understand the mathematics, we cannot do any of the problems, any of the physical problems associated with quantum mechanics. So those physical problems, of course, we will learn later. But before going into that, we need to learn what is the notation that quantum mechanics use. What is the kind of mathematical operations that you do on quantum mechanical wave functions, on quantum mechanical wave vectors or vectors, state vectors, and all of that. So that's why we first need to learn the mathematics. So as you remember from the superposition principle, we saw that any wave function can be written as a linear combination of the other states, right? So psi1, psi2, psi3, etc. could be the other states, and a1, a2, a3, etc. are the scalars or the constants with which you can form a linear combination of these states and get the full wave function. Okay. All right. So because, in quantum mechanics, you will see that we always do a linear combination of the states. Okay. So because of that, most of the operators, okay, and the state and these psi1, psi2, psi3, these are wave functions, sometimes also known as vectors. Okay. So all of these vectors and operators and all of that, they follow certain properties. Okay, which will lead to the linear combination, which will lead to the superposition principle, essentially. So we need to learn about the properties and about the wave functions and about these scalars also, what they are, how, and we also need to learn about the operators that act on uh, these wave functions. Okay. So one thing, whenever you write these wave functions, right, psi1 of x comma t. So this is written in terms of the continuous space. So you are assuming that there is some continuous space, and in this case, the space is one dimensional because there is only x coordinate. So in that continuous x coordinate space, you are writing the wave function. But the same wave function can also be written in terms of a discrete space. Okay, discrete meaning uh, discrete is like an integer, right? So if you have an integer, it is discrete because there is nothing between 1 and 2. 1 is an integer, then next integer is obviously 2. But if you are in the continuous space, say x is a uh, any continuous in the continuous space, then between 1 and 2 there are infinite number of numbers, right? You can have 1.1, 1.11, 1.12 and all, and you can even break it down further. So that is the continuous space, and sometimes wave function is also written in the discrete space. When it's written in the discrete space, these are called vectors. Okay, so that's why when you deal with in a continuous space, you are writing everything, the operator and everything is in terms of differential equation type of operator. Okay, so there are like Laplacian operator and so on. But if you write it in the discrete space, then the operator becomes like a matrix and the wave function becomes like a vector. So the matrix operator is acting on the vector. So something like that. So we will learn about this, but just to give you some background. Okay. So because everything deals with this kind of a linear combination, we have to learn about linear vector space. Okay. Now linear vector space consists of two elements. One is and two sets of elements and two algebraic rules. Okay. The two sets of elements we have already seen. One is a set of vectors. Okay. Vectors are psi, phi. Basically, these are wave functions. So one is a set of vectors and the other is a set of scalars. So scalars are these constants like we have already seen a1, a2, a3. These are constants. So these are scalars and vectors. So every linear vector space will have a set of vectors and a set of scalars. And now these elements, they need to follow some rules. So what are the rules? So the rules are, one is a addition rule and one is the multiplication rule. So in the addition rule, what happens is, we say that if psi and phi are vectors of a space, their sum psi plus phi is also a vector of the same space. Okay, so just to give you an example, psi is a vector, right? So you can consider any vectors. Let's say psi is a right two element column vector. So this is 2, 3, and phi is 1, 2. Then psi plus phi will also be the same. But if psi is 2, 3 and phi is 1, 2, 3, okay, then there are 3 elements in psi and only 2 elements in psi. You cannot really add them up, right? And there is no way to add. So they belong to different spaces essentially. So you can only add vectors which are of the same space. You will understand what the space and all means when you actually do the physical quantum mechanical problems, which we will do in later chapters. But just to give you an example, that if psi belongs to one space, phi belongs to the same space, then only you can add them up. Then there is commutativity. Commutativity for addition. Okay, so commutativity for addition is meaning any order you add, it will give the same answer. So you do psi plus psi or you do phi plus psi, they will give you the same value, right? Or the same vector. Then associativity. So here again, whether you do psi plus phi first and then you add it to chi, another vector, or you do psi, or you do phi plus chi first and then you add it to psi, both are going to give you the same answer. Okay, that is associativity. Then existence of zero or neutral vector. So again, if you consider a zero vector, zero, okay, null vector or zero vector, and you add it to another vector psi, or you can also do psi plus zero, you'll get back psi. These are simple addition rules which you intuitively understand. If you don't understand anything at any point, please stop me, okay? Please stop me and ask. All right. Now, existence of a symmetric vector. So if you do psi plus or minus psi, then you're going to get a zero vector, right? Because you are just cancelling out each other. Then the next set of rules is the multiplication rules. Okay, multiplication rule, the first one is product of a scalar with a vector gives another vector. Okay, so if psi and phi are two vectors of the space, any linear combination of the two vectors, a psi plus b phi, is also a vector. This we have already seen, right? This we anyway know from the principle of linear superposition, right? That this will be a new vector. Here a and b are scalar. So a psi is also a vector, b psi is also a vector. You add them up, you'll get a new vector. That's what it means. Then distributivity with respect to addition. So a is some constant, scalar constant, and you multiply it with the whole psi plus phi, then you can individually get a psi plus a phi. Similarly, if you do a plus b into psi, then you will get again a psi plus b phi. Okay. So these are very intuitive, but if you have any doubts or something, you can ask me. Then associativity with respect to multiplication of scalar. So if you multiply a with b psi, or you first multiply ab and then that product you multiply with psi, both will give you the same answer. Okay. All right. Now for each element psi, there must exist a unitary scalar I and a zero scalar 0. So unitary means if you multiply the psi with some unitary scalar, which means basically 1, you're going to get back the psi, right? So that's what it means. And if you multiply with 0, you're going to get 0. All right. So these are the rules and elements of the linear vector space. Okay. So now let us look at a space called Hilbert space, which encompasses the linear vector space. So linear vector space is part of Hilbert space, but Hilbert space has some extra properties in addition to the properties of the linear vector space. Okay. So Hilbert spaces consists of a set of vectors. Again you have same set of vectors, set of scalars. So set of vectors could be psi, phi, chi, right? All the wave functions. And set of scalars could be a, b, c, the constants that satisfy the following properties. So the first property is that H is a linear space. So Hilbert space is a linear space. That is the first property. So it will follow all the properties that we have just seen about the linear space. So vectors addition, multiple, right? So the two elements, basically the vectors and scalars, and then the two rules, which are addition rule and multiplication rule. So all of that applies to Hilbert space as well. Okay. Then we have Hilbert space has a defined scalar product. Okay, so scalar product is something like a dot product, but slightly different. So scalar product of two wave functions or two wave vectors are written as psi comma phi. Okay, in brackets. So this means what you are going to do is you are going to take if suppose psi and phi both are vectors. Okay, then what you're going to do is you're going to take the complex conjugate of psi, then take its transpose and then multiply it with phi. That is what you're going to do. So in a dot product, what you do, you just do psi transpose into phi, then you'll get a dot product. But in a scalar product, you have to take the complex conjugate also of psi. So you take complex conjugate, then take the transpose and multiply it with phi. So that is your scalar product. So we look at some problems and stuff also associated with this. But right now I'm just giving you the definition. So psi and phi are in general complex vectors. So of course, if it is real, if both psi and phi are real, then the complex conjugate of a real number will be the same number, right? Because that means there is no complex conjugate. So it will give back the same number. But if psi is a complex number, complex vector, then you are going to then you can actually take the complex conjugate, right? So that's what you will do. So that's why psi and phi are in general complex vectors. So I should write, so the scalar product of psi comma phi, right? So scalar product of psi and phi will give you a complex number because these are in general complex vectors. So the scalar product will give you a complex number in general. Of course, it can happen that it might also give you only real or only imaginary number, but in general, it will give you a complex number. Okay. So in the scalar product, the psi comma phi, right? The order is important. Okay. So here I've written what it means. So sometimes this is also written as psi star phi itself and not specifying the transpose because you assume that you anyway have to take the dot product after you do this. Okay. So, but the point is that in this, the order is important, just like you do any matrix multiplication. So now all the concepts of vectors and matrices will apply here. Okay, so just like in matrices, when you multiply two matrices, order is important. Similarly, here also order is important. So scalar product of psi phi is not same as scalar product of phi psi. Okay, that is you have to remember. Then if psi is equal to a psi 1 plus b psi 2, then phi comma psi, right, the scalar product of phi psi will be given by phi comma a psi 1 plus b psi 2. And then what you can do is you can take individually the scalar products of each term. So you'll get a is a constant, so you can take it outside and you'll get a into scalar product of phi comma psi 1 plus b into scalar product of phi comma psi 2. Okay. We will also look at problems when it will become clearer, but please stop me if you don't understand because these concepts are important. If you don't understand these mathematical background, then the rest of the quantum mechanics will become very difficult. Okay. So similarly, if you have phi equal to a phi 1 plus b phi 2, right? Then the scalar product of phi comma psi will be now a phi 1 plus b phi 2. So you have to take the complex conjugate of a and b also because it is on the other side, right? So then you will get a star into phi 1, a star into scalar product of phi 1 psi and plus b star into scalar product of psi. Okay, this is what you will get. So you see the difference between this and this. When a and b, the constants are on the right hand side of the scalar product, then you don't have to take the complex conjugate. But when they are on the left hand side, because phi 1, phi 2, etc., to compute the scalar product, you have to take complex conjugate of phi 1 and phi 2, basically of phi, which means you need to take the complex conjugate of a and b as well. So you have a star, which is the complex conjugate, which is the complex conjugate. Okay. All right. So I hope you understand what complex conjugate is. Complex conjugate is, suppose A is equal to 2 plus 3i, then A star will be 2 minus 3i. So whichever the complex part will become negative. Okay, so if A is 1 plus I, then A star will become 1 minus I. That is what we mean by complex conjugate. Okay, anyway, we'll look at problems. Then psi comma psi. What is this? Is again the scalar product psi comma psi. So psi comma psi will give you basically psi square, right? And psi square we have already seen it is the norm of psi. Okay, which is a positive real number. This we have already seen, isn't it? This is basically your probability density, right? Yeah. So probability density is given by psi square. So probability density of finding some particle in the space. Okay. And this is always going to be greater than or equal to 0 because it is a positive real number or non-negative real number. And it will only case when psi square will be 0 is when psi itself is 0. Only then it will be, this square will be 0. Then Hilbert space also satisfies some properties related to Cauchy sequence. I'm not really going to go into what Cauchy sequence is much. I'll just explain it to you what Cauchy sequence is, but I won't go into the properties of it because it's not really important for us to understand the rest of the stuff. So Cauchy sequence is a sequence whose elements become close to each other as the sequence progresses. Okay, so if you look at this graph, okay, so as n progresses, the function xn becomes close to each other. Okay, that's what it means. Okay, so this is an example of a Cauchy sequence. So as you go to higher and higher n, your f of n becomes closer and closer to the previous. So f of n will be closer to f of n minus 1 than it was earlier. So f of 100 and f of 99, if you compare, they will be much closer to each other compared to f of 2 and f of 1. So something like that. That is a Cauchy sequence. So there are some properties associated with Cauchy sequence that the Hilbert space satisfies. So this I'm saying just for the for completeness sake, but it is not very important for us. Okay. All right. So in a scalar product psi comma psi, psi will belong to Hilbert space H, and phi will belong to the dual Hilbert space. So this basically Hilbert space and dual Hilbert space are complementary spaces. So basically psi and phi cannot belong to the same space, but they belong to complementary spaces because if psi, in order to take the dot product, you remember, if psi is a vector, right, and it is a vector which is given by 2 cross 1, okay, so 2 rows, 1 column, then in order to take the dot product, phi will have to be a 1 cross 2 vector, right? It will have to be a row vector. Only then you can. So phi and psi are basically complementary to each other. So that is what it is trying to say. Okay. So this is because
we are taking transpose, na?
What?
We are taking transpose, right?
Yeah, we are taking transpose. So in a dot product also you essentially take transpose, right? If I give you two vectors, phi and psi, both vectors are of order 2 cross 1. So 2 rows, 1 column, let's say. Then how will you take dot product of the two vectors? You have to take the transpose of one and multiply it with the other one, right? Think about it. Wait, let's look at an example where I had the example, let's see. Here. 2, 3, 1, 2. Suppose I ask you to take dot product between psi and phi. Only way, if you think about it in terms of the matrix multiplication, you will have to take transpose of psi, then you will get 2, 3 as a row vector, and phi psi will be column vector 1, 2, and only then you can take. That will give you a number which will be 1 cross 1, right? Because this is 2 cross 1, this is also 2 cross 1, but the transpose will be 1 cross 2. right? The order of the transpose will be 1 cross 2. So 1 cross 2 and 2 cross 1 you can multiply, and finally the vector that you will get will be 1 cross 1, right? General. So that is what I mean when I say. Okay. So where were we? Okay. We'll look at examples, then it will be clearer. All right, so this is because scalar product is not, so basically phi and psi need to be complementary to each other. Only then you can do the matrix multiplication. Otherwise you can't do the, so only where matrix multiplication is applicable, then you can take the scalar product. If matrix multiplication itself is not applicable, then there is no point, right? So that is the whole thing here. Then we'll come to problems pretty soon, and then it will be fine. So dimension, then let's look at dimension and basis of a vector. Okay. So a set of n non-zero vectors, phi 1, phi 2, phi up to phi n. Okay, so these are some non-zero vectors. These vectors are said to be linearly independent if you write the equation this. Okay, you write some equation with where ai's are all constants. So basically you are writing a1 phi 1 plus a2 phi 2 plus a3 phi 3 so on equal to 0. So if you write this equation, and if the solution of this equation gives you that all a1, a2, a3, everything is 0, then you say that these vectors are linearly independent. If you do not get all these a1, a2, a3, if even one of them is not 0, if even one of the scalars is not 0, then you say that these vectors are not linearly independent. So that means they are linearly dependent. Okay. All right. Right. So if there exists a set of scalars that are not all 0, so that one of the vectors, say phi n, can be expressed as a linear combination of others. Right. If at least one is not 0, that means that can be, that particular phi n can be represented as a linear combination of the others. Then the set phi I is said to be linearly dependent. Okay. So dimension, right. So now let's look at the, so this is what we mean by linearly independent and linearly dependent. You basically have to write such an equation, and then you have to find what are the solution, okay, and what is the value of a1, a2, a3, etc. If all a1, a2, a3, etc. are 0, then you say it is linearly independent. Otherwise, you say it is not. That is the whole point. So what is the dimension of a vector space? Okay. So the maximum number of linearly independent vectors the space can have. If the vector can have n linearly independent vectors, then the dimension of the space is n. Okay, that's what we mean. So in this example, there are n linearly independent phi, right, vectors. So the dimension is n. But in this example, one of the vectors is not linearly independent, right? Which means the dimension is n minus 1. So that's what we mean here. Okay. And what is the basis of a vector? The basis is basically all of these linearly independent vectors. They together form a set, and that set is known as the basis. So this set here, right? Phi 1, phi 2, phi 3, phi n. This is the basis, okay? And individual vectors are called base vectors. So that's what it means. All right. So now expansion coefficient. So how will we find AI? All of these, all of these AIs. Tell me.
Excuse me. Ma'am, what's the difference between basis vectors?
So basis vector, basically when you write some function psi in terms of other functions, okay, in terms of other vectors. Like here you are writing psi in terms of phi 1, phi 2, phi 3. So all these phi 1, phi 2, phi 3, etc. These are the basis vectors.
Okay, so we have an vector which is expressed in some terms of vectors. That is why it is called like each other basis. Okay.
Yes, 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 correct. Okay, and the number of such vectors, that is the dimension. Okay, so here if there are n such basis vectors, then you have n dimension. That's all.
Ma'am, in the chemistry, even for the coordination chemistry, when it comes to the reducible representations, there also we talk about basis function. So is that function is reducible to this basis vector? I mean, if I'm not
Basically anything that can be reduced to the lowest form. Okay, so here the lowest form would be this, each individual vectors. So these individual vectors all combine together to form this. Okay, so that is why these are called bases. So the bases of psi are basically these vectors. So that's why, right? I mean, I think the term basis implies that what is the main thing composed of? What are the irreducible quantities that they are composed of? So that's why you hear the same kind of term in different subjects as well, right? Because these are the irreducible terms. So be lower than phi1, phi2, phi3, you cannot go. So these become the basis vectors, essentially. Okay. Okay, so then what is the way to compute AI? So any of these A1, we need to compute A1, A2, A3, etc. right here, all of these. So how can we compute that? We can do that by taking scalar product of phi. So if you want to compute A1, for example, we take scalar product of phi1 and psi, then you will get A1. So that is how we do it. Okay. Then these are some properties. So a set of linearly independent vectors can be arbitrary, right? But it is convenient to choose them as orthonormal. Okay. So what do you mean by orthonormal? Orthonormal means the scalar product of two vectors, two of the linearly independent or the basis vectors of the two scalar products will give you delta ij. Okay. So delta ij means, in terms of vectors and matrices, delta ij means the value of delta ij is 1 if I is equal to j, and the value of delta ij is 0 if I is not equal to j. Okay, so they are saying that linearly independent vectors can obviously be arbitrary, but most often, if you want to construct a wave function composed of the linearly independent vectors, then it is convenient to choose such how to get linearly independent vectors. The easiest way is to choose them to be orthonormal. And this is the condition for orthonormal, meaning that if you take scalar product of any two linearly independent vectors, then you will get 0 if the vectors are not the same. Okay, that's what it means. So for example, I and j, right? For example, R is equal to xi plus yj plus zk, right? So R vector can be written in terms of xi plus yj plus zk. So I, j, k, these three are basically linearly independent vectors, because if you take scalar product of I and j, so dot product of I and j, what you will get? You will get 0. Dot product of j and k, you will get 0, right? But dot product of I and I, you will get 1. Right? So these are examples of linearly independent vectors which combine together and form your actual vector, which is R. So that's what it means. Okay. So here the example is already shown to you. So the vector A is given by A1i plus A2j plus A3k. So here A1, A2, A3 are obviously scalars, and I, J, K are the base vectors. Okay, and so why they are base vectors? Because they are linearly independent. Because if you do I dot j, you're going to get 0, and I will give you, I dot I will give you 1, right? Similarly for the others. Okay, and obviously they are linearly independent because you cannot express j in terms of I or k, right? They are completely independent of each other. All right. So So how will you test whether they are independent? You have to write down this equation, a1i plus a2j plus a3k equal to 0, and see what is the solution of this in terms of a1, a2, a3. So the solution is obviously going to be that a1, a2, a3, all three are 0, because there is no way to make a2j as in terms of a1i or a3k or something like that. Okay, we'll look at an example now so you'll understand it better. And obviously you can get a1, a2, a3 by doing the scalar product. So you can get a1 by doing a scalar product of I and a. a2 you can get by doing a scalar product of j and a, right? And a3 you can get by doing a scalar product of k and a. Okay, that way you can get a3. Okay. Now let's look at this. Okay, this is a question. Check whether the following functions or vectors are linearly independent or dependent. Okay. So first of all, these are the functions. Okay, f of x, g of x, h of x. All of these are different functions. F of x is x, g of x is 5x, h of x is x squared. Just by looking at it, you can see that g of x is 5 times f of x, right? You can see that. So obviously, just by looking at it, you can say that these three are not linearly independent, okay? Because one wave function can be written in terms of the other wave function. So they are not linearly independent, okay? But mathematically, how can you show that? So first of all, write this equation, ai sigma ai phi I equal to 0. So when you substitute for phi I, you'll get a1 f of x plus a2 g of x plus a3 h of x equal to 0. Okay. Now substitute for f of x, g of x, h of x here. So you'll get a1x plus a2 into 5x plus a3 into x square equal to 0. Now what you do, because you have three unknowns, okay, you need to find what is the value of a1, a2, a3. Okay, so there are three unknowns. So if there are three unknowns, you need to get three equations. So how will you get three equations? You can just substitute different values of x. So in order to get first equation, let's say we substitute x is equal to 1. So we will get a1 plus 5a2 plus a3 is equal to 0. Then next one, let's say we substitute x is equal to 2. So we'll get 2a1 plus 10a2 plus 4a3. Plus 4a3 is equal to 0. Then let's say we substitute x equal to minus 1. So we'll get minus a1 minus 5a2 plus a3 equal to 0. So these are your three equations and you have three unknowns, right? a1, a2, a3. So all you have to do now is to solve for this. So if you add up 1 and 2, sorry, you should add up 1 and 3. I think this is a typo here. So add up 1 and 3, right? 1 and 3. So you will get 2, so a1 and minus a1 will get cancelled, 5a2 minus 5a2 will get cancelled. You are left with a3 and a3. So 2a3 will be 0, which means a3 is 0. Okay, so at least one of the constants you have got 0. Now let's look at other constants. So if a3 is 0, then you can substitute a3 here. So this will be 0. And what you are left with is a1 plus 5a2 is 0. Okay, so you have a1 plus 5a2 is 0. And then you get a1 is equal to minus 5a2. So now you see that a1 is depending on a2. So if a1 is depending on a2, then definitely all the three functions are not linearly independent. Okay, because if a2 is some value 1, then a1 will also have a value corresponding to the value of a2. Right? So if a2 is 1, then a1 will be minus 5. Like that. So a1 and a2 are not linearly independent, and therefore the functions are also not linearly independent. So the answer is that f of x and g of x are dependent on each other, which means the three functions g of x can be written as 5 of x plus 0 into h of x. Okay, the functions are not linearly independent. Is this clear? Let me know if you have any questions here. Okay, you've seen how mathematically we have proceeded. So for example, if there are 4 functions, then you will have a1, a2, a3 and a4. You'll have 4 unknowns. So what you have to do, you have to substitute 4 different values of x. Okay. So if you substitute 4 different values of x, you will get 4 equations. And then using the 4 equations, you can solve for the 4 unknowns. The 4 unknowns will be a1, a2, a3, a4. So if for all a1, a2, a3, a4, you get value 0, then only you can say that the functions are linearly independent. All right. Now let's look at another example. So A is given as 3, 0, 0, B is 0, minus 0, and C is 0, 0, minus 1. Okay. So we need to look at the equation again, A1 into A plus A2 into B plus A3 into C. So first of all, you can write A as 3i, B as minus 2j, C as minus k, right? Minus k. Okay, this is what you have written. A equal to 3i, B equal to minus 2j, C equal to minus k, right? Because for I and j term, they are 0 for C. Similarly, for B and A, you can see how it is. All right. So now what you have to do, you have to find A1A plus A2B plus A3C. So what is that? 3 into A1I minus 2A2J minus A3K is 0. Okay. Obviously, I, J, K are independent of each other. All right. So since I, J, K are independent of each other, the only way that this equation can be 0 will be if A1, A2, A3 all are 0. Okay. So if A1 is 0, A2 is 0, A3 is 0, only then you will get the, but basically that is the solution of this equation, because otherwise there is no way that this equation can be 0. So you are saying individually all of this need to be 0. 3a1, 2a2 and a3. Let's look at another example and it will be slightly more clear. So A is your 6 minus 9, 0. B is minus 2, 3, 0. Okay. So you need to find the solution of A1A plus A2B. So A can be written as 6i minus 9j. B can be written as minus 2i plus 3j. Right? So this is how we have written A and B. So first we need A plus A2B. So what is A1? So you'll have A1 into 6i minus 9j plus A2 into minus 2i plus 3j. Okay. Then what you do, you take all the I terms common and all the j terms common. So all the I terms common means you'll get 6a1 minus 2a2 into I. And then all the j terms common, so you'll get minus 9a1 plus 3a2 into j. Now the only way that this equation, so this equation is 0, right? This is, this term is equal to 0 is the equation, and we need to solve for a1, a2. So what you can do is you have to individually show that these terms corresponding to I and j are individually 0. Okay. So individually the coefficient of I is 0 and the coefficient of j is 0. So what is the coefficient of I? It is 6a1 minus 2a2, that is equal to 0. So you will get a1 is equal to a2 by 3. And if you do the same thing here, minus 9a1 plus 3a2 is equal to 0. So you'll get a1 is equal to a2 by 3. So you can see from this that a1 is equal to a2 by 3, which means a1 is dependent on a2. If any coefficient is dependent on another coefficient, right? If a scalar is dependent on another scalar, then you say that the vectors are not linearly independent. They are actually linearly dependent. So A and B are linearly dependent. Okay, because if you now put any value of A, so if you put A2 as 3, then you will get A1 as 1, and so you will get the vector capital A is equal to minus 3 times the vector capital B, right? Which means these two vectors are dependent on each other. So A and B cannot be linearly independent. Okay. All right. So now I've just given you some problems. I think you can work it out. So check whether the following functions or vectors are linearly independent or dependent. So these are the 4 functions. F of x is minus 2 plus x, g of x is x square minus x, h of x is 1 plus x, and n of x is 3 minus x square. Okay. So these are your 4 functions. and part B is the vectors A, B, and C. So these are your 3 vectors. And C is A, B, C, and D. Your 4 vectors. So you have to check whether these functions or these vectors are linearly dependent or independent. Okay. All right. I think in the next class and all, we will see how to do the scalar product and all of that. So I think I will stop here for today, and tomorrow we can see the rest of it. Any questions so far? Okay.
Ma'am, do this question, I mean, in this class would be included in the assignment or till the last week?
Which question?
This one, the homework question that you showed, this one.
No, this is second
Like
chapter, no? So this is assignment 2. Consider it part of assignment.
Right.
What?
Till the last week, like, I mean, the last class that you have done in the last week,
Yes.
that portion is in the assignment. Okay.
Yes, that part is in assignment 1. So this is the second, this is like, I'm considering today's lecture is the start of the second chapter. So in second chapter, you have the assignment, but that will be part of assignment 2. So you have 3 questions here, but these are part of assignment 2. So you have to do it.
Okay.
For the next submission date, whenever that is. Okay.
Okay.